At this time, Pastor Kim Metzer from the Hope United Methodist Church will start us off with a prayer.
Let's pray. Almighty God, we come together this morning grateful for this opportunity to do so. In this time of physical distancing, we can still be socially together, and we are so grateful for that. We are a divided nation, Lord, and it is my earnest prayer that this small community can be a shining example to all of what it looks like to work together collaboratively, despite any differences we may have. As we continue to struggle with the uncertainty that surrounds coronavirus, we ask for your healing touch on all who have been afflicted, your continued protection of those who have not, and for a cure to be found. Lord, we ask for your divine guidance as a community, as church, and as school leaders continue to grapple with all of the challenges the last few months have brought and will bring. Finally, Lord, we ask for your presence here, to give the speakers the words to say and the listeners the ears to hear. As we consume our breakfast physically distant, but spiritually together, we ask that you bless the food to our bodies and our bodies to your service. And it is in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're gonna start out with Mikhail Van, and I just want to give you a little background about Mikhail. We're really fortunate. We've got two speakers who have fabulous backgrounds, and I think everybody should be aware of this. But Mikhail received her Master of Arts in Family Systems from the Western Michigan University, and has an advanced diploma in community management from Darwin University in Australia. She's currently completing her master's in marriage and family therapy, specializing in trauma at North Central University. Mikhail's worked with children and families in the child welfare system for over 25 years. She has managed and led highly effective teams based in Australia and the European Union. She's passionate that a child's right to attain permanency is deemed paramount. She lives by the motto, all families and individuals have the capacity to foster resiliency despite the barriers they have faced. Mikhail enjoys working for Casa Berry County and capacity building in the Hastings and outlying communities. Thank you. Please welcome Mikhail Van.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I was just sitting there listening, and I'm like, exactly who is she talking about? It sounded a bit impressive, but at the end of the day, I think those accolades or credentials absolutely mean nothing. It's all about the passion and the work for making a difference in vulnerable children and families' lives. So for me, that's the bigger picture and all of that. My name's Mikhail, and I'm the person in Berry County. And so this morning, my goal is to tell you a little bit about CASA and the work that we do. If you have any questions, please forward them over and I'll try to answer them. I won't be able to answer them in this small space that I have, but I would definitely answer them. Also, I'm going to have a CASA advocate, Miss Lori Curtis. I'm going to introduce her, and she's going to talk about the whys. Why does she do this? What compels her? What is that passionate about? So she's going to talk about that a bit. So let me give you the backdrop about CASA, Berry County. CASA Executive Director is Becky Carson. And Becky runs the Ingham, Eaton, and Berry County. She's an overseer. After Becky, we have Amanda Girding, and Amanda is the program manager. And she supervises myself and the other two supervisors in the Ingham County. What does CASA stand for? CASA, what does it stand for? Does anybody know? Can I get raising of the hands? Okay, I don't see any hand claps. I don't see any hands. That's okay, I'm gonna tell you. So CASA is court appointed special advocate. That's what we stand for. And what does that mean? That means we're special and we get to advocate for children. That's some big stuff. How does that happen? How does it happen? Well, our CASA advocates are volunteers. They're volunteers. They come to us because they want to make a difference in children's lives. That's why they volunteer. They want to make a difference. And studies have shown, and this is why this is so important, making that difference and advocating. Studies have shown that children who receive an advocate / CASA are more likely to attain permanency. What does permanency mean? Stability. That's what that means. What else does it mean? It means that the children won't be moving from placement to placement. And why? Why? Because they have a CASA. They have someone there that's going to advocate their best interests, wishes, feelings, and make the recommendations on what's best for that child. So now that you got a little bit of backing and you understand it, CASA volunteers, they train. They have to go through a 9-week training that's quite intensive. They meet weekly in that training, in that 9 weeks for 3 hours. We go over a lot of caveats in that. One of the main things we talk about, which is critical for children in care, we talk about trauma. We talk about the acute trauma. We discuss the complexities in the trauma. And we talk about the chronic trauma, the chronicity. Because we understand that all children who enter into the care system, they have been exposed to trauma. And so as CASA advocates, we're trained to observe the behaviors that come from that. We're trained to understand what recommendations will be necessary to support the child to navigate those emotions, to help stabilize a placement, to help support the foster carer who's caring for these children. So that training is significant. 9 weeks of training. After the training, they're sworn in. Can you guys hear me? Hello. After the training, they are sworn in. George Doherty appoints them at that point to advocate for the children. So it's a big deal. They are appointed by the courts to advocate for children after they finish that 9-week training. And then once they are appointed, they get assigned a case. And the unique thing is about that case, and when I talk about the cases that we get referrals from the court. So all of our cases are referral from the Doherty County Court. So once an advocate has been appointed, they get to decide which case would best fit their expertise. Because what I didn't say is our advocates, our volunteers, they come with a wealth of experience, various backgrounds. So when those cases come through, they get to decide which one best fits their skill set. Once they get the case, then they work with that child and family until permanency is achieved. And sometimes that means a year and a half. It just depends on the direction that the case can take, because it can take various directions. So what I did not mention was that, what does that permanency look like? Permanency looks like reunification, because that's the goal we always want. We want children to go back home. That's the best place for them. We look at reunification or adoption. That's how long we stayed on the case. The advocates then at this point, once they're sworn in, they're appointed a case. Then what happens next? They go out and they meet the children. They meet the foster care. They collaborate with all the other players involved in the case. It's almost like, I always think about it as a circle around the child. So you got the child, you got all these players, all these players within the system looking for the best interest. So they go out, they make sure they collaborate with all the main players who are involved in the life of the child. They meet with the child weekly. At the very minimum, they meet with the child 2 hours a week. That's not a lot. That's not a lot, because during that time, they're starting to build that rapport with children. They're also assessing and observing what's happening for the child in the home, internally, which is critical because they need to understand that child. They see the child all the time. So they go out, they see the child. And the other reason why they want to make sure they see the child, because they have to write a quarterly report. And that report gets submitted and it talks about the recommendations. And those recommendations are done independently. And that's critical. The recommendations on the court report is done independently based on the observation of the child, their interaction with other service providers, and the conversation with the child. Sometimes the child may tell the advocate, and the advocate may say to the child, what would you like for me to tell the judge? Sometimes they will say, I miss my mommy. I want to go home. That's a big voice. That's a big voice for a child to say who's in care. So when we write those reports, the quarterly reports, we make sure we put those pieces in there. And from there, we make the recommendations. Let's see what else. Got my notes, guys. And so sometimes, but I understand it hasn't happened in Berry County, but sometimes in other counties, advocates are expected to testify. That's how critical and important the work is that we do. They're expected to testify, especially like in Wayne County. It's an expectation because you are with that child often. You're the eyes, the ears, and the voice for that child. The advocates in Berry County, we work closely with DHHS. We have cases whereby there's a wraparound services. Advocates connect with therapists. Advocates connect with parents. We connect whoever is critical in that child's life because we want to make sure we have a clear snapshot on what's happening for the child. I think I can take questions because I feel like I'm going on and on. I feel like I'm going on and on and on, but I just want to make sure that that you can take a nugget and have an understanding of the work that we do here in CASA. We're not just going to play with children. It's so much more than that. So much more than that.
Do we have any questions at this point?
Mikhail, do the advocates work with only one child at a time or one family at a time?
Yes, it's one family. It's one family. I know there's been some cases in other counties where the scenario may be different, but in Berry County, in my experience, it's only one family. And sometimes if there's a complexity in the case, there's a lot of dynamics, sometimes you will see where 2 advocates will be assigned to the case. So that does happen on occasions.
I'm curious, Mikhail, how many advocates do we have in Berry County? It sounds pretty extensive, the volunteering.
It is. And so currently we have 11, and that's a mix of active and inactive. And those numbers will vary. Those numbers vary. Of course, I must say during the pandemic, things have shifted a little bit for various reasons. But again, those numbers do vary. Currently, we are recruiting, and this is a PSA, folks. Currently, we are recruiting. And if you or your peers or anyone you know is interested, please reach out to me. We're anticipating that we will have a training sometime in September. We're just not sure of that date.
So, Mikhail, I have a question. How are you managing through COVID and staying in touch with the child?
That's a good question. So what we've been doing, initially we were just connecting with children over the phone, as with everyone else, just because of the physical and social distancing thing and safety, right? So that's what we were doing, but then that has shifted now, and advocates now get to choose if they're comfortable with entering into the placements where the children are staying. And within that choice, the placement gets to decide if they're comfortable with the advocates coming, because most often that child has a lot of service providers coming and going. So for us here in Berry County, it's worked well. We actually have 3 advocates that are currently going to see children, which is excellent, because one of the concerns and worries during this time was about that connection and that bonding, because it is difficult. It is difficult to do that connection, particularly when we're dealing with traumatized children, right? And not only that, even normal children, right? So-called normal, it's difficult. So we're really pleased that that has taken off. And I know there's one case I'm thinking of, the child, the little young bub, he's about 4 or 5. He was so happy to see his advocate that he was able to share his secret. She's been seeing him now for about 8 months. He never shared the secret. And he was so happy to see her that he shared this massive, traumatizing secret to her. And so that was really good that he was able to disclose that, release some of that pain in her. But the thing is, he had been holding it. He hadn't told anybody. But the minute he saw his advocate, the person who he sees all the time, he couldn't wait to disclose that secret. He could not wait. I'm just looking at the time because I can go on. I've got a lot to say. So I was actually trying to look at my notes and tailor it down, because I actually have Lori who wants to talk about her role and why she decided, or why she had chosen to be an advocate for CASA. Lori, can I introduce you? Because I'm about to take your space. I'm sorry. You ready, Lori?
Yes, I'm ready. I don't know if you guys can see me. I goofed up my phone, so I can't really see my screen, but can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, Lori.
Okay. Well, hi, I'm Lori Ann Curtis, and I am at CASA. I've been on my first case right now for about a year, just over a year, I guess. It was, like Mikhail said, I went through the training for CASA, 9 weeks of training. And, you know, looking back, I was just talking to my foster mom last week, and I was telling her that it's kind of like the story of the starfish. If you've never heard it, it goes something like, you know, there was a man walking along the beach when he noticed a child picking up starfish and gently tossing them back into the ocean. And the man asked why. And the boy said, because if they're left here, they will die. But the man said, you can't possibly save them all. And the boy said, I just saved that one. And that's really what CASAs do. We are assigned to one case. And as Mikhail said, it's one child or one family, you know. With the one case, we're able to focus on the one starfish. And these children have experienced things that no child should have to. And we hope with our involvement for the very best outcome for them and their future. In the case I'm working on, I can't give a lot of details, but we were in a Zoom call and Mikhail was on the call as well, and all the related parties were on. And we were talking about a change for the children, and they, you know, they'd already experienced a number of changes and had a lot of disruptions in their lives. And in discussing this change, Mikhail spoke up and said, wait a minute, I think we need to slow this process down. These children have been through a lot, and I think we need to proceed at a slower pace. And that was very important for these children, and I think it made a lot of difference for them to accept this change that had to take place. So that's just one example, and there are lots of others. We have a support meeting every other month where the CASAs get together, and you know, we can talk about different things and kind of support each other. And the things that I've heard and the changes that CASA has been able to see for the children is amazing to me. And it's not about us, it's about the kids, and they are our future. And I am really, truly blessed to have the children I'm assigned to. They are a bright spot in my life. And, you know, the whole time during COVID, from March until just a few weeks ago, it was very difficult. I know Mikhail talked about how we were working through COVID, but to try to talk to a small child on the phone and get from them what is going on, and like Mikhail said, the secrets that they need to tell you is very, very difficult. So I was very excited to be able to see my kids, and I started seeing them just a few weeks ago, and it's just amazing. I don't really know what else to say. I don't know if anybody has any questions or if Mikhail wants to add anything.
No, Lori, I think you've done an excellent job in sharing your experience as an advocate. And I think it's fair to say that everyone can hear the passion and how you talk about the children that you advocate for. And I think that speaks volumes. It speaks for itself. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Okay, well, listen, like I said, I guess we did go over our minutes. I'm really sorry. I knew that was going to happen. Guys, I did take notes, but I failed. But listen, please, again, if you are interested, or if you know anyone that you think might be interested, please reach out to me. We would really appreciate it. The children would appreciate it, and the community would appreciate it, because when we're involved, it definitely makes a difference. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikhail. Let me make sure. And thank you, Lorianne. That was really heartwarming to hear.
Thank you.
Hear everything that's happening. Kim, did you have a question? No. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on, and our next speaker is Martha Ports, who is the Executive Director of Family Promise, and I want to give you a little background. Martha has been the Executive Director of Family Promise since February of 2019, which I believe, Martha, is when it started. Correct me later if I'm wrong. She's a Hastings native. She worked for, that's right, okay. She worked for 11 years as a high school English teacher in Hastings at the high school. She left Hastings in 2012 to teach at a university in Yantai, I believe, China, where she lived for 3 years. She returned to the US in 2015 to teach adults at a community center in Chicago's Chinatown. After her adventures afar, she returned to Hastings to be near her family in 2018. While she misses the teaching field, she is so thankful to channel her passion for people into the work of Family Promise, and she hopes to make a positive impact in the community. Martha has a master's degree in English education from Grand Valley State and a master's degree in spiritual formation, excuse me, and discipleship from Moody Theological Seminary in Chicago. Like all of us, 2020 has brought a lot of new routines in life, but has brought some extra newness for Martha. Since March, she has gotten married, become a first-time homeowner, and most recently, a first-time dog mom. So please welcome Martha Ports.
Thank you so much for that, Linda. And I truly am thankful to be here. It's been scheduled for us to speak in August for over a year now. So I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. I want to introduce our brand new case manager. So on staff here at Family Promise, there's me, and we have a part-time bus driver, and this is Morgan Kashner. Sorry. She just started Monday, so she hasn't run away yet. So it's all good, and we're really thankful to have her join us. So I want to share my screen. Oops, I'm not able to do that. Linda, can you enable me to screen share? Okay, thanks.
Second.
No problem. So I know some of you know a lot about Family Promise. There are some former and current board members on this call, some church level volunteers, but then I know some of you don't know much about Family Promise. So I want to start by explaining a little bit about what the organization is and how we run, and then get to exposing some of the need in Barry County, which again, I feel like is a little bit of preaching to the choir, so I'll run through that quickly. And then at the end, hopefully have some time to share some success stories, because it's been a wonderful year and a half almost that we've been open. So while we're waiting for the sharing
I'm
part.
working on it. I'm not sure.
It's okay, no problem. I'll just jump in. So yeah, Linda mentioned I did start in February of last year, but the work to bring Family Promise to Barry County started back in 2016. A group of really dedicated community leaders, just amazing heroes, laid a lot of the foundation, raising awareness, raising support. And then when I was brought on in February, we were able to get our day center, which I'll talk about in a minute, up and running. And we brought in our first family in April of last year. So it's hard to pinpoint the start, but the start was really back in 2016. So when someone asks me what Family Promise is, I give them this sentence that has 3 components. I say that Family Promise is a community response that provides temporary housing and personalized mentoring to families experiencing homelessness. And so as I share what Family Promise is, you'll hear those 3 things echoed again and again: the community response, the personalized mentoring, and the temporary housing. And I love the name of Family Promise because the name Family Promise, it has 2 different meanings that it implies. For one, that there's an inherent potential or promise in every family. So the families who come to us, sometimes they're at the lowest point of their lives. Trauma is just wreaking havoc on all elements of their daily life. And but the fact that they have that love, that bond as a family, that is their promise and their potential. And that's what's going to get them through the hard parts. And we have the joy to come alongside them and help them at that point. The other meaning to Family Promise is the idea that the community is promising or committing to come alongside the family and walk with them at that time. So that's another element of why I love the name Family Promise. And Family Promise is actually a national organization. It started in the mid-'80s in New Jersey, and since then it has spread throughout the entire country. We're in nearly every state, and there's over 200 affiliates or locations like we are. And some of them have been in existence since the mid-'80s. Others are even newer than we are. So it's great to have that bond of what other directors and other locations are going through. And I also love the model of Family Promise because it works really well in urban communities. Like Grand Rapids Family Promise has been in existence since '97, but it also is really adaptable to rural communities like ours. And each location is able to take the model and make it work for their community. And I just love that concept.
Martha,
So,
could you,
yes.
excuse me, could you try?
Oh, yes.
I
Thank
should
you.
have
It's
enabled it.
working.
I should have enabled it from security, so let's see.
Okay. Are you seeing my slide now? Or
Yeah.
am I?
Yes.
Great. All right. So, oops, I'll start here. So before I get into what the model is, just a few details about that I like about the benefits of it. One thing you'll see as I share about it is we're not a traditional homeless shelter, which is great because it takes away the stigma that comes with traditional shelters. And of course, it reduces our overhead costs, which is really nice. Another benefit is it allows the families to stay together as a unit. Again, a traditional shelter, typically men and women are separated. So that means that a single dad couldn't potentially stay with his daughters in a traditional shelter. Or before we had a single mom and a 16-year-old boy, and they would have been separated. And that just breaks my heart to think about a kid and a parent going through that, having to sleep in different places. Another element, and this is where we go back to one of our 3 components, we build that personalized mentoring. We build a lot of accountability into our program, and we do a ton of personalized goal setting, setting SMART goals and action steps and things like that. And part of the goal setting is it creates a funnel to other resources. We want our families to leave us fully ready to be self-sufficient and to know about all the amazing resources in our community, from the fresh food initiatives to the Shack or Mana's Market. We want them to know what's available in the community so that they can manage on their own. Another benefit is it uses buildings that aren't in use at night, so that's a good thing. And back to that community response, it brings a shared ownership in a community to address homelessness. It gives the average person a way to help. So I know this is a lot of text on the screen, but the program is basically split between our day center and our host church. So our day center is where our families stay from 7:30 in the morning until 5 p.m. Sunday through Friday. And here at our day center, we have a shower, we have laundry, we have computers, we have really like a home base for families. Each family has their own private space, especially with COVID, where they can be safe and secure and have some consistency. And that's where our families meet with our staff. We set monthly goals of where do they want to be in 30 days. And then every week we touch base and we pull out what are the action steps they're going to take to make those goals. And honestly, we have daily contact with them to help them with those action steps and those goals. And our day center is located just south of town at Hope United Methodist. And they've given us some great space here to have our day center. And then our host churches, you'll see in a moment, that's where our families are at night. So we have a bus that drives our families from Hope to whatever church is hosting that week, and they stay at the church all evening and on Saturday. And basically what the churches do is they take their Sunday school classrooms and they turn them into a bedroom where the family can stay together. The churches provide meals. The families always love to tell me what their favorite meal was at every church. It's really fun. And then they also provide volunteers to be with our families, to encourage them, to care for them. We've had some churches, where families volunteer. And so the volunteer kids have fun playing with our kids, and that's just a blast. Our kids love that. Here's just a quick picture of our bus. We are so thankful for it. It's a beast, but we're so thankful for it. This is what we use to transport our families between the host church and the day center. I've also used it to drive kids to school every once in a while and things like that. So here's a list of our blessed host churches. We are so thankful for them. And we do have a network of some support churches also, where they are maybe a little bit too small in population or their building to host, but they come alongside a host church and help. And I really want to keep building some of those. So one of my favorite things about my job is connecting different churches together, again, to serve people in our community. And the thing about being a host church, it is a lot of work. Some of you are probably saying amen really loudly. But they only do it 4 times a year for a week. So, and as we hopefully bring on some other churches, I hope to even decrease that a little bit, you know, so that the burden isn't too heavy. We have churches all throughout the county. As you can see, we have some in the northeast corner with Kilpatrick and Lakewood United Methodist. We have some churches in Delton and a lot centered around Hastings too. So that's really great. And here's a picture of a bedroom at Lakewood. So you can see that it was a classroom, a Sunday school classroom, and Family Promise owns the beds and a trailer that is transported to every church on Sunday afternoon. As the next church, it's transported to the next church on Sunday afternoon, and then their volunteers will set up the rooms, and our families come Sunday night to stay. So the impact of COVID has been really intense. Of course, in March, we became what we would call a static site, meaning we stopped rotating from church to church every week to minimize the time on the bus, which, you know, it's a small bus, and to minimize like the exposure to new environments. And so we stayed at Hope United Methodist for 3 full months, and we were able to have private space for the volunteers and the families, and private bathrooms. So each family had their own bathroom, the volunteers had their own bathroom. And we changed a lot of the ways we do things, which was really unfortunate for a lot of people. Our volunteers really miss the personal connection of playing board games and card games with our families. But sorry, it just kind of is what it is right now, and just kind of pushing through it. So we sheltered 3 families here at Hope between March and the middle of June. And during that time, all 3 families exited. 2 were really beautiful, wonderful stories. And that's a really good thing. But we are ready to go back into rotation with some extra stipulations as soon as we get another family. So this is our blessed ribbon cutting for our day center. And so since April 2019, I think the actual number is 148, not 150, but different families have contacted us. Sometimes it seriously is a person in need of housing or somebody facing eviction. Other times it's somebody in another county wanting some help. Other times it's maybe somebody calling to say, my grandkids are staying with me, I need to find another spot for them. So those calls are just a time for me to listen to people's stories and help direct them in ways that they should go, in resources that can help them if we can't. And we provided housing for 10 families in that time. So this next part, I know some of you know really well, so I will kind of try to jump through it. But another kind of element of what we do is to just expose the need. How, you know, I came most recently from Chicago. I saw homelessness on a daily basis with people sitting on the curbside, camping out in cardboard homes. I walked by it every day. But homelessness looks different here in Barry County. This picture is of the t-shirt for Family Promise, and it's just trying to get people to realize that homelessness is present here, it just looks different. So a lot of our families, the majority of them, come from what we would call couch surfing or doubling up, where they're staying with one family or friend for a couple nights, and then they shift to another family or friend for a couple nights, and they just keep jumping around. And that instability just wreaks havoc on little kiddos. And so we love to be able to provide more consistency for them while they're here. We've had families who have come to us from living in their cars. And especially this time of year, a lot of families are camping. And so that's another issue. So bringing awareness is a big thing. And I'll just quickly go through this part, and I have a chart on the next slide to explain this. If you're not familiar with it, the McKinney-Vento Act is from the late 80s, and it's focusing on homelessness, and a huge part of it is to help kids who are homeless with their education. And the way that this law defines homelessness is lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So that means fixed, meaning it's in the same spot. Regular, you know, it is a home, not you know, a shed or something, and adequate meaning it has, you know, the utilities that we need to survive. So this chart shows 3 of the 5 school districts in Berry County, and this is from 2017-2018 data. So what the 4 rows here, we have the number of homeless students in that district in that school year, the percentage of the student body, the number of classrooms of homeless students. And as a teacher, that truly impacted me to see that, you know, in Delton Kellogg schools in that year, basically 5 classrooms of 30 kids were homeless. And you can also see the number of Family Promise guests that have stayed with us in the last year and a half who have been in that district. And the next slide has Maple Valley and Lakewood. And then all Berry County schools combined. I just added all the data together. And when you see this, you really notice this is an issue. And, you know, as Mikhail was talking about bringing stability, bringing caring and love to the kids that she works with, you know, 14 classrooms of kiddos in that school year had instability in their housing, and the huge impact that has. The thing that this data misses, though, is the national statistic that 51% of homeless kids are under 5, or not school age. And so we're missing a huge number of kids in that data that I just showed. And our numbers don't necessarily reflect that statistic at this point, because we've only had 6 kids out of all of our guests who have been under 5. So don't forget those kids who aren't in school. And this slide too, I'll just go through quickly. The concept of an Alice household, where they're asset limited, they don't have savings, they're income constrained, they're not able to make any more money, but they're employed. Our very first family that stayed with us was an Alice household. He had a pretty good job at a local manufacturing plant here in town, but they just had no savings and they had no means of making any more money. So when different bills piled up, they got behind on rent and found themselves being evicted. And the numbers here in Berry County from 2019, 37% of households in our county meet that definition. So meaning that they are at total risk of becoming homeless very, very soon, you know, as you get behind on medical bills or any sort of bills like that. And here's another slide that, again, has way too much text on it. But just to summarize, this is from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, showing the fair market rent. And as I look at this data, I just looked at this on their website yesterday, fair market rent in Berry County for this current year is $852 per month. The income that a person needs to afford that and not be more than 30% of their income is they need to make $16.38 per hour. And I know this because my husband's been looking for work closer. It's really hard to find that rate around here. In fact, the average renter's wage in Berry County is just under $13 an hour. So we see there's this huge gap in what income is being made, is being earned, and the amount of money that housing is costing in our county. It's a huge issue, and I know it's been in the newspapers a lot in the last couple of years. And we're hoping for some answers, some more housing coming in soon, but that doesn't help the situation right now. And especially with COVID, you know, we all know there's a lot of doomsday reports coming out about the economic impact of COVID and everything, and we're just starting to see a lot of that with the eviction moratorium ending about a month ago, and there is some extra money right now to help with diversion for evictions from the CARES Act, but that's not going to last. You know, there is going to be a huge impact that's going to have a ripple effect. So I wish I could look into the future and know, you know, what this is going to look like coming up, but it's, all reports are indicating that homelessness is going to become more of an issue because of COVID. And so despite all that negative stuff, I always try to celebrate every tiny victory. I actually have a little sign on my desk that shows this. And I just wanted to end, of course, if you have questions, I can take that too, but just end with a couple or just one quick story of a huge victory that happened. And this slide shows some of them, and I can tell you the stories later if you really want to know. But the story I want to share is this one. So we had a mom that stayed with us for a couple months, and she was very young, and she had had a lot of disruption in her teenage life, and she never learned how to drive a car. And as we know, in Barry County, transportation is really an issue. This mom had actually lost 2 jobs in connection with a lack of transportation because she needed to work later than what the transit was open and things like that. She really had a lot of issues with transportation. And so this is a beautiful story of how our churches come together and our community comes together to help. We had at one of our host churches 2 different people who volunteered at our host church. They were drivers and instructors. And so one of them came to our day center, and they used my car at Hope's parking lot to practice parking and, you know, getting used to vehicles and things like that. And the other volunteer used one of their road cars and took this young mom out on the road to help her practice driving. And I'll never forget the day that I took her to Barry ISD's building, and I was the nervous mom in the back seat as she did her road test there. And so happy to say that she got her license. My car's no scratches on it. Well, none that she caused. And you know, the church even helped to pay for that test, and she was able to save up her income. She didn't have a job when she came to us, but she was able to get a job while she was with us, and she was able to save up enough to get her first car. So she left us with her first car, with her license, and now she has a reliable way to get back and forth to work. So that's a big victory, but that's definitely one that I truly treasure. And I just love how it is the whole community coming together to help our families where they're at. So I just want to end with my contact information, and we take referrals from anywhere. We have people will cold call us. They'll have found us online. A lot of people hear about us through church volunteers or just kind of through that network. I also, anybody from any of the agencies in town, many of them have called me to say, I have this family, you know, they might be calling you. I told them about what you do. So feel free to send families our way. Really, the baseline is that children need to be involved. So we have provided housing for a pregnant couple. We've provided housing for a family that didn't have their children, but then eventually regained custody of their children. So the idea is that children need to be involved. And yeah, we'll go from there. So yeah, what kinds of questions do people have?
Let's open it up to questions. Does anybody have questions?
Or anybody have anything to add? We have some church volunteers on the call, some board members on the call, some past board members on the call. Feel free to add anything.
If you have a question, make sure that you unmute yourself, please.
Not a question.
Kathy?
Oh, Kathy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm just curious to explain some of the requirements, because I know that that's something that's real important, the expectations of new families coming in,
Mhm.
that I think it's good for everyone to know, and for the families, obviously.
Yeah, so, you know, we're happy to talk with any family. Even I've talked with people who are single as well, you know, just to listen to their story and point them in the right direction of where they can get help. But yeah, going to your question, we do require that children are involved. I do a background check on our family, just because we are completely volunteer run, except for like me and Morgan. And so we want to make sure, and they're with other families, so we do want to make sure everybody's safe, and that there's no recent violent history in their background. We're also not necessarily a good fit for somebody who's battling addictions, again, just because we're all volunteer run, and we don't necessarily have that level of support So as far as requirements, we definitely prefer that they are Berry County based, or have like a solid connection here in Berry County. Because something I've seen over time is that the more support a family has, the more likely they are to be successful. So we've had people come where they really just have one family member in town, and that's a really hard situation. And so that's definitely something we also consider. I hope I answered your question.
There was a comment that this person loved the slide about the housing costs and the wages that you need to make, and that it was very powerful. And and I agree. I think it was.
Yeah.
We've got time for one more question if anybody has a question. Okay, Martha, thank you. That was wonderful. And this will be, we're going to put this on our website, both presentations today. So I hope that everybody enjoyed this. This does conclude our presentations. Hope you've enjoyed the speakers and their topics. And I will be sending out a Survey Monkey. So if you would please just take a couple minutes to respond so we can get feedback to make improvements or have these folks back again in the near future. Thank you for attending and enjoy this beautiful day. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.